Okay, so I'm here today with Peerfit CEO, Ed Buckley. Hello, Ed. Thanks for
How are
joining us
you?
today. And managing partner and Peerfit investor, managing partner of ARC Applications, excuse me, and Peerfit investor, Dan Greco. Welcome.
Hey, Jamie, how are you?
I'm great. Well, I really appreciate both of you guys hopping on today. I always love talking to both of you guys. It's always fun to just kind of spitball and talk startup shop. And so today I wanted to dig into the story of Peerfit and kind of get the inside scoop on the company. And it's evolved so much over the past many years. And it's really had so much success and, of course, a lot of breakout success recently, which I want to ask about. But I also wanted to just kind of back up for a minute for any of the startups who might listen to this and kind of dig into how Peerfit got started and what the initial start and journey was, and then kind of where you are today. And so let me start off by asking you, Ed, I know where Peerfit started in the early days and where you are now looks like really different. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on companies and their breakout successes. But I think the outward successes are really just manifestations of all of the foundational work that you put in the early days. So can you tell us a little bit about how Peerfit came to be and what made you decide to pursue building the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking back to that time and looking where we are now is always a fun exercise. Look, it's like being a caterpillar, right? Turning into a butterfly. There are stages that you go through to get to where you are. And regardless of whether those stages take you 2 years or 4 years or however long, everyone goes through them at some point. And so, in the beginning, the idea around Peerfit was a pretty simple one. We knew group fitness was the stickiest component of physical activity, right? If I can get somebody into a group fitness setting, they're far more likely to stay active. So we knew that was a great thing for individuals and frankly for our society. And we knew that there's a lot of stakeholders. You've got the gyms and the instructors, you've got the individuals who consume them, you've got people who pay for it, employers' health plans. And so you've got such a multi-sided market, it was going to be rather complex to tackle. So it is, how do you tackle this? Where's the chicken and the egg, solution of, do you start with the gyms, do you start with the individual? And so what we knew going in was employers and health plans would be a component of the solution. What we didn't realize was it would be our only solution that we would ultimately focus on. And there are other direct-to-consumer, companies out there who thought that's the path. And interestingly enough, they've come into our lane and we've not come into their lane. So I like to think that while we didn't think this first, we did know we needed to get there, but we did get there first, really before everybody else. And where we got pushed into going into health plans and working with employers was right here in Tampa. So Jamie and I knew each other back in Gainesville at the University of Florida. And that's really when Peerfit was just kind of spinning its wheels, trying to figure out what we were going to do, right? Where is the solution related to physical activity and helping people? We got to Tampa as part of the Health Box program. I can actually see the Sykes building from my window right here, where it was at the time, where the Wave was and Health Box was. And it was Florida Blue who said, look, you really should take this consumer grade solution and just go heads down on employers. And luckily for us, we don't have a lot of fear. So we said, fine, let's start pitching employers. And started calling up companies here in town. And funny, one of them that we pitched was Agile Thought, who we did some work with, and then full circle, we hired them this past year to do some work for us. So it's just, great to see the loop close. But yeah, we just started pitching employers and realized, look, you got this great consumer grade solution. Pretty much employers had been paying people to go to big box gyms and nothing else. From an administrative perspective, they hadn't found a way to scale this into a digital sense. They hadn't found a way to brought studios in. They hadn't found a way to get the data back. and then manage all of the reimbursements. And so we knew that the infrastructure we could go and tackle was that. That's the value prop that could scale. And if you could get in with employers and have enough initial non-scalable success, then you could go to the leverage distribution side, which would be brokers, which would be health plans. And that's where we are today, right? More than 16,000 employers around the country have Peerfit fully funded for their employees. Now, some of those employers bought it themselves. Some of it chose to buy up as part of the health plan, and some it just came as part of their health plan. And then because of that success, because we were working through that distribution channel, it was the health plans again who said, I wish you could do what you've already done for the under 65 space in the over 65 space, right? In the Medicare Advantage space. And so we looked at it as a very similar problem. The distribution channel is very similar. We could build our product to be a next gen for the senior market. Let's go in and disrupt it the same way that we did on under 65. So there was a lot of decisions. I look back, just having memories from being at Sykes and making phone calls back when we were an absolute nobody. No one knew who we were, and we were just pitching off of an idea, which hopefully a lot of the startups out there or wannabe startups can appreciate. Fake it till you make it. I can think of so many of those people who didn't respect us then, who now are partners of ours now. There are companies who've tried to buy us since then who didn't respect us back then and basically laughed at us and told us, how dare you think you can do this, especially unless you do it with us. So life finds a way if you're passionate and you're dedicated to what you do. But to continue my soapbox, and I know you haven't asked me another question, but another thing that helped get us there, you can only go so far in passion and persistence. You have to have fuel, right? You have to have the right fuel in your car. And that's where, Dan and some others here in Tampa came in, was they took myself, clearly a very energetic person, and they helped give us the runway. They helped give us the guardrails of where to go. They helped speed us, certain things up with experiences they had already been through, making phone calls here, making phone calls there, right? That's the important part that a lot of people don't think about, because what you'll hear is, well, at that stage, you just need to work 24/7 on your business. I heard an entrepreneur at Synapse almost pridefully talking about the fact that he doesn't take days off and he's working himself into the ground. And I think about, that's actually not a good example to set. What you should be saying is, I do take time to go and read books, listen to podcasts, find my own personal board of advisors, get input from them. Because if you're locked into that same problem, which is, I'm trying to start my company, I'm trying to build my widget, right? You are missing the other things. You're missing the perspective and the objective wisdom of others who are not in it day to day. And that's one thing that I think we got a lot of things wrong, but we got one thing really right in those early days, was we built an amazing board of advisors for both the company, for myself. And that's really why we are where we are today. Because as I mentioned, we didn't constantly succeed. We did have to go back to them, ask for help, ask for more money, get input, get counsel, get support. So that's something that we did get really right, in my opinion.
Well, you've hit on a lot of things that I wanted to ask about, and I want to dig into all of those things. But like, following along on what you did get right, one of my questions was, if you can distill down like into a few ingredients of what really helped Peerfit become Peerfit and what you really got right, what do you think those like critical ingredients are for success?
We made the hard decisions. There have been a lot of uncomfortable decisions. There've been a lot of really hard choices, right? That we've made throughout time. And I remember the first really hard one, I was talking to people like Dan and some others, and I said, the fact that you're not ignoring this and you're tackling it now shows me that I should be really happy about the potential here, right? Because at that time, a lot of the investors and advisors said, I've been at companies where you avoid some of these problems, right? I don't want to go into specifics because I don't want to cast anybody in a negative light, but there's just decisions you have to make, right? Not everyone who goes from here is going to get you to there. and the company has to evolve, the personnel has to evolve, whether it's taking someone who's been with you early and saying, I need you to do a different job than you've done, or I need you to do less and only focus on this, or to go to somebody and say, hey, you've been great, but this isn't a relevant position to this company anymore because, we're shifting. Those are really uncomfortable conversations. They never get easier. I will just tell you, I've had a number of them in the last few years. They never get easier. They're always hard. They always make you sick to your stomach, but choosing when to say no or goodbye to a client, to an employee, to a cause that you really wanted to go to is what we got right.
Yeah, staying really focused on your mission.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'll give you an example where I was the one in the wrong and the company got it right. So Jason Perry is our chief strategy officer. He was an advisor to the company. He represented 3 different investors in Peerfit before he worked here. So he was another example of great advisor to me and great advisor to the company. And we knew we wanted to go into a new segment. And it was either go into hospitality or go into Medicare. And me and Todd, our chief growth officer, we were taking meetings on both sides. The hospitality one was far more fun, right? We're going into that's far more fun than the idea of Medicare at the time, especially people who weren't familiar with it. And Jason finally said, we can only do one of these. And he's not one to put his foot down too hard and said, we are going into Medicare. It's exactly what we need to do for our mission, for the distribution that we go, the way that we built this company, the opportunity's better there. And so once again, I was leaning more towards hospitality. We got it right. The company got it right because we were having the right conversation and we forced ourselves to make a hard decision.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's so important to surround yourself with, people who are really dedicated to the mission and kind of can see the forest through the trees, right? Like really kind of keep you pointed where you need to go. So speaking of being pointed where you need to go, let's bring Dan in here. So Dan, you've been, I hear you were investor number 2 by a few hours. So you've really been along the Peerfit journey since the beginning. So I'm curious, what made you decide to invest and what you found in Peerfit that was so exciting to you, especially in those early.
Great question, Jamie. So for me, I still remember to this day meeting Ed for the very first time and how much energy he had. Ed and we joke about it now. I met him at Starbucks over on Howard, and I know you used to have an office above it, Jamie. So I met Ed there, Starbucks in Howard. It was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting. I think we stayed for a little under 2 hours talking. And just as Ed explained the mission, and I saw how much energy and passion he had about it, I was blown away by it. So as soon as the meeting ended, I opened up my computer and I emailed my 2 partners, Bob and Justin, and I said, this is the guy that's going to help put Tampa on the map. And I still have the email and how excited I was about that and the mission and Ed and how much energy. And I often break it out as Peerfit hits some milestones, and I go, yeah, we hit that one right. And what's fascinating is we were very, from a firm perspective, meaning ARC Applications, we were very young in our own evolution at that time. So our journey has been very paralleled along with Peerfit in terms of our growth and success as a family office and investment group, very much so with Peerfit. And we like to do a lot of follow-on investments, and we've followed on with Peerfit all along the way and pretty much every round. And we're so excited about how each one of the employees and the directors of the company really are focused on the mission and are great stewards of the company. And Ed kind of hit on that a moment ago. They've made the hard decisions. They've made the right decisions. Some of that is timing. Some of that is just pure great leadership and management. And Ed is a model for a lot of these startups and early stage companies in Tampa. And as he alluded to, I work with a lot of companies in Tampa. I always try and pull Ed to talk to them because there's a lot of companies that can learn a lot of different things, the successes that Peerfit has had over the course of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely something I want to ask about too, because I think both of you guys are so committed to community and kind of mentoring, earlier folks who are earlier in their careers or their company progression. But before we get into that, I'm curious. So when you met Ed, how much do you feel like was just like gut instinct, and how much do you feel was like, oh no, this business model makes total sense? Like, what was it that really, like, you were like, I'm in?
It's a great question. So, whenever a group goes to invest in a company, there's their own, due diligence that they look at. And it's always, very similar playbook, right? It's, what's the industry? What's the timing? What do the financials look like? What's the business model look like? What's the strategic plan, technology plan, marketing plan, all those fun things that you can measure. We have another element that we use, and I'm lucky enough to have one of our partners. So my two partners, Bob Smith and Justin Smith, are also my brother-in-law and my father-in-law. So, we are really a family office. And Bob is a practicing psychologist. He's been a psychologist for, well over 40 years, has his own company that's very successful here in North Tampa, that's been around for 43 years. It's all about team. It's all about being able to measure the team and how effective they are. And no matter how good of a product or service that you have, no matter how good the timing of the industry is, if you don't have a team that can execute and do the things that Ed had mentioned earlier, none of that matters. So the measurables always measured up when I looked at Peerfit from an investment standpoint, but the team and the leadership, those are the things that put it over the edge for us. And when we look at, new investments or folks that we're going to work with, even from a consulting standpoint, I always use Peerfit and the leadership model that they have as a litmus test for us in our investments. And even when we bring new people in, I talk about, this is Peerfit, this is Ed, and Ed meets all of them. He talks to all of them, and I encourage that because I want them to understand this is an expectation, and the bar has been set by somebody like Ed, and that's really important for me. And being able to have a success ratio from an investment standpoint, but also to have companies that are here and residing in this area that are going to grow here, are going to stay here, and most importantly, are going to pay it forward. And Ed does a great job of that.
Yeah. Yes, he absolutely does. So let's talk about community, because I think, I think all three of us are really committed to the Tampa community and the startup community in general. And I'm curious, let's talk about Peerfit's community. So Peerfit has a really strong community, and then I want to talk about Tampa's community, because I think there's some correlations there. I guess in general, why do you guys think that building communities is so important?
Well, I think it goes back to our premise of physical activity, right? There is data that shows you are far more successful when you are, right? Even if you don't care about physical activity, simply having other people hold you accountable, people that you can help mimic even when you don't know what you're doing, right? And that comes down to building your own community as a person. So community is, as far as I can see, the most successful thing that, regardless of the task, keeps people going in a certain direction or throws them off course, right? There's this saying that you are the average of the 5 people you are around the most, right? That by definition is your community. So if they have good habits, you will pick up good habits. If they have bad habits, you will pick up bad habits, right? And so forth. So really it's this idea of community naturally occurs. It's always this 3 to 5 person pod around you. This just occurs constantly around our country. This is not indicative to Florida or Tampa or anything like that. And so understanding how to leverage that, understanding that if you can get 1 or 2 of the influencers in a pod, you can get the whole pod, right? So I think that's how we've always looked at it, as it's just frankly an effective system. That's why you should help support it. It's because it builds an ecosystem that helps you have a leverage distribution for a message or for a good cause or for healthy, frankly, organisms around you, right? Like if I'm investing in the community, I am by definition investing in myself again. because I will be an average of the things around me. I think that's where Jeff Vinnick has gotten it so right. Look, I'm not poo-pooing other cities, but I've certainly seen other cities come in and have a not cohesive strategy with redeveloping downtown. Jeff came in and understood holistically you have to invest in the whole community, not just buy a couple of buildings, right? You have to invest in both sides. And that's what I think, I'm not from Tampa, and the city has been very warm in adopting me and welcoming me. And so I have tried to do the same back. And anytime that we're out speaking, anytime that, we're talking about success, we want to make sure to bring it back to the message of Tampa. Because like I said, I was a nobody, knew nobody, had no connections here, no family history here. And the city's been nothing but gracious and nothing but warm in the 5.5 years that I've been here. So it's just, I'm here because I've chosen to be here, right? That I didn't grow up here. I'm here because I fell in love with it.
Yeah, I love that. Dan, what are your thoughts? I know that you're super active in the community, and I guess, there's some things that where areas where you look to always be investing in the community, and what's your thoughts and like approach on kind of being involved in the community?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm also not from Tampa. I grew up in the Northeast, but my wife is fourth generation Tampanian. And, me coming from a very fast-paced area like the New York City area, I had to learn to slow down a little bit here. And I really quickly realized that this is a relationship-driven town. And everybody, there's like 1 degree of separation between folks. So for me, I tried to really understand the landscape and realize that common practices that I have always been used to needed to change in order to be more effective here. And to
You
me,
can't yell in meetings like you do in New York, Dan.
It's exactly right. So for me, it ended up being that, I'm at a point where in my career where, look, I have 3 kids, and it comes about modeling, right? And what do I want to leave for them? How do I want them to view dad and what we do, what I do as a professional? Because they ask, like, what does daddy do? And I always say the same thing: I help people, right? Because it's not about, we're in business to make money like everybody else is, but it's about the footprint that I leave, right? And whether I'm spending time to help Ed and mentor Ed from a CEO perspective, or spend time with our other prime investments, Script and their 2 founders, Pat and Aaron, to me, it's about being there for them to help grow them and create that next generation of leaders. I spend a lot of time as an entrepreneur in residence at University of Tampa, helping both their accelerator and incubator program, because I love seeing how they have these great ideas and how they curate it, and then giving them a real world perspective and expectations on that and helping them grow. Another great example of that is Jackie Darna from No More Nausea. She was in the accelerator program at University of Tampa, barely trying to keep that company surviving. And now she's literally everywhere. And she's done a great job. But everybody starts like that. And they need people that are volunteering their time to be able to share the perspective to give them that opportunity. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. How can I help other people get to where they want to go? Because people did it for me, when I was younger in my career, and I want to be able to give that back. And I also want to set the model for my kids to know that you can be more, you can do more, and you can give more.
Yeah.
I would like to interject, because he's not going to give himself enough credit, but I've had more introductions from Dan introducing me to young CEOs, not necessarily age, but in the maturity of their career or their current job, than probably everyone else in Tampa together. And the reason I bring this up is to say, I always tell everyone, look, I got here because people mentored me. They still mentor me. They help me, and I'm very happy to give back. And Dan always identifies people and says, hey, I got someone, they'd love your help. Or even if I've already met them, he'll come to me and say, hey, I think it's a perfect time for you to lean in on this. And so he really does practice what he preaches. And because of that, I've gotten to know more of the companies here in Tampa. Like I said, I wasn't from Tampa. And so it's been great exposure for me. I think one of the best reinforcements as a student of life is when you have to teach a lesson, right? It reinforces it in your own head a little bit. So helping talk to people who were in the same position that we were in a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's just a great way to keep me being a better CEO, right? Even where we are today. So.
Yeah, I love that. I've always found that when you give, you actually get so much more back in return. And, to your point, Ed, it really does kind of strengthen the learning. It just reinforces, all of your past experiences and really just kind of cements it, at like a whole new level. I feel like that's cool. I love that. Okay, so, I think we could talk forever, but I do want to also get into kind of where Peerfit is now and all of the exciting things that are happening right now. And I know some of it, maybe you can't share all of it at this point, but can you kind of give us a scoop on where Peerfit is, what the big news is?
Sure. Far be it for me to try to stop the media from doing investigation. I can tell you that what we as a company can confirm is, yes, we recently did a transaction with a large global brand. What it involved was technology, IP, personnel. The only existing relationship moving forward is a transitional licensing agreement between the two parties. And really what that does is set us up, right? What I can more honestly speak about is actually, so what does this mean, rather than what did the deal look like? Because there is more than enough speculation of what the deal looked like, and neither Dan nor I are going to be able to speak on that. But it doesn't take much internet Google searching to form your own opinion. So, what this does for us is a couple of things. One, doing a deal like this helps set us up for 2021. We've got a lot of things we want to accomplish that sets us up for a big year in 2022. Doing a deal like this helps give us the necessary capital and independence, right, to achieve really anything that we want to go out and do, which is great. But at the same time, it also helps focus us on what do we want to achieve. Going back to saying no, if you're going to enter in a deal like this, you kind of already have to have figured out what you're trying to accomplish after the deal, right? You got to be 2 steps ahead. So it really helped as a board and as a management team decide what are going to be the things after this transaction that we want to focus on. So that was really great. I think it was great for Tampa. I will continue to say this. It's a bigger headline than it is a story. And for us, day to day operationally, not much is really changing to our side of the house that remained with Peerfit, and so not much changes day to day there. But in the grand scheme of things, here you have Peerfit, which has done, the people behind Peerfit have done an amazing job of going from 5 to 50 to 150, world class talent and nationwide accolades and amazing investors that come in not from the Tampa market, great board members, and all of those great achievements. And then to say, and oh, by the way, we've just had a transaction with one of the most notable brands in the world, and it allows us to do a shareholder redemption so people can take some de-risk their position in what we still are, right? A growth company, a startup company, which is always risky. COVID can change things like that, right? So it was a great opportunity to also do that for the community, because now think of the Dans and the Bobs of the world. They not only got the experience of being a mentor on this ride, which is very new and unique for Tampa to go on that hockey stick, in a 3-4 year period. But then they get to walk away and say, hey, I've still got chips on the table in Peerfit, but I also de-risked and have more capital to now go put back into the company. So hopefully what it's done is we're like a boat that's just left this wake behind us of success and learning lessons. So the investors feel a little bit more comfortable about deploying capital. They have capital to deploy. The people that were staff at Peerfit, whether we're here for all of it, some of it, part of it, right, can go to these other startups with the lessons we learned during that time. So it really is a wake of success for the Tampa Bay community. That's how I see it.
And I was very impressed with that double snap, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and the wake of success, man, the visual there is great. That'll be the headline here. So I'm curious, Dan, from your perspective, how much work and effort was this transaction on your part? How much I guess went into it?
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak to that as much, but I guess I will footnote and say that Ed and I talk a lot. And we talk several times a day, and we've been talking several times a day for what seems to be the last, 7 to 10 months. Ed?
Yes. I'll put it to you this way, Jamie. We have several major investors and board members who have been a part of a lot of startups, sat on a lot of boards. And I think unanimously, I've heard from every single one of them, this was one of the most unique deal circumstances and deals to get done that they've ever been through.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, then kudos to you guys. I mean, kudos anyway, but it sounds like you guys really earned this. So that's awesome. I'm curious. I know that I was following along and went at the start of COVID, and I know you were doing like a lot of team building exercises, and I mean you were really kind of embracing the challenge or rising up to the challenge. Were there some things that you did during COVID that have kind of impacted where you are today?
Heck yeah. All right. So there's tons of things that we did when COVID hit that have been influential. Let's go with number one. We created this, we called them innovation roundtables, and think of them as twofolds. They were hackathons, and then we also had just informal, you got the entire company floor to pitch to on, it could be an idea. It didn't even have to be a new feature. It could say, I've noticed this trend. I've noticed this gap. Here's what I've seen about it. I'm now pitching that we need to investigate this way, right? So the idea was top to bottom, side to side, could we get the best information and the best ideas? This then led us to create the product known as Peerfit Digital, which is just a conglomeration of all of our digital assets. So we built this product, marketed it, and have had record sales with it in the last few months. So while the rest of the market is declining, consolidating, we actually have seen sales go up, go into new types of employers and health plans that we weren't able to get in before because of this new product, right? And this was all about, I'm sure for every one idea that was good, there were 10 that we just couldn't, capitalize on. But it was about leaning in as much as possible to say, I don't care what position you have, I don't care how long you've been here. If you have a good idea, if you are seeing something, even if it's with another company in the market where you see a deficit, let's call it out in front of the whole company. And so we did it every single Thursday, I think probably for the first 5 or 6 weeks. Then what we did was we moved it to every 2 weeks, right? Because then at that point, we exhausted a lot of things. And then we ended up putting a pretty structured process around how to help drive resources to these ideas that were coming through. So I think it was really great. And I think it helped bring the company together from an engagement stance of, it gave them confidence that, hey, we're in this together. We've got a good vision. We want the best ideas. We're not sitting back saying, oh no, what are we going to do? Because of COVID. It gave every contributor the confidence in our direction. So I think that's probably one of the single biggest things that we've done that commercialize into a new product that is actually out in the market selling.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think that's just such a model for like bringing your whole team together and letting everybody's voice kind of be heard, and getting their buy-in. So that's awesome. Okay, so
I will say, Jamie, sorry to interrupt, but I want to close another loop on that. Something else that we did during that time that I think helped us even more than just the ideas, this totally flies in the face of what a lot of executives believe, especially more kind of old school ones, was I actually shared what came out of those innovation roundtables. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I shared every week what was being pitched, what ideas we liked, what trends we were seeing in our own data. And I thought I owed it to the community here in Tampa and the community that we're a part of in the broader digital health, wellness, healthcare space, so that they could see We had a lot of people ask us, what does this mean for Peerfit? And I wanted them to see real time. We were on it. We were thinking of new ideas. And some people thought, well, your competitors could see your ideas. And as we all know, it's not the idea that people copy, it's the ability to execute. And I knew our ability to execute ideas is just dramatically better than a lot of those other contemporaries out there. So I had no problem sharing what was out there. And I thought it bought us so much goodwill in the community. So many other executives had reached out, or it went from a neutral relationship to a really positive relationship because of our transparency with what we were doing, what we were seeing, and just trying. I mean, we were legitimately trying to set a good example, whether you're a startup, whether you're a big company, whether you're in our industry or not, to say, here's how one company is doing it, and warts and all, here's how we're working through this day to day.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Ed, because I feel like you're also reinforcing your culture, right? And being transparent with the organization. And, it's a watershed moment for a lot of companies and industries. I mean, COVID has hit people very, very hard, both, domestically and internationally. And, a lot of companies have not survived, and we fundamentally changed how we've worked. And for the type of leader that Ed is and the organization that Peerfit is and the culture that's been developed, it doesn't surprise me. This is just one of those things that reinforces everything that Ed has done to set up a phenomenal company, taking advantage of something that is unfortunate for many people. And he's created an innovative opportunity in the face of something that has paralyzed a lot of people. So, again, it just reinforces my excitement about what they're doing and how they're accomplishing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's the authenticity, right? I think some of what both of you guys have said, like that authenticity, both at an individual level with Ed and the team, and then that reinforces the brand, and then it kind of wins the hearts and minds of everybody, right? It kind of takes on this larger than life thing. It's not transactional, right? It's relational. That's cool. So wrapping up, one of the things I was wondering if you guys could talk about is if there's one thing that you would want early stage startup founders and early stage companies take away from all of this, what would it be? What's like the one thing that you would want to leave them with?
So this will seem counterintuitive because Dan is on this call and he is an investor. But what I would say is, don't just rely on your investors to be your advisors and your board members. And independently of the fact that Dan and Bob and them invested, we then chose separately to have our, agreement of how we want to work together, right? Because there are plenty of people who've invested in Peerfit and they get the quarterlies and they get the annuals, and that's when we talk, right? We've chosen to have a kind of a separate how we want to talk and how we want to brainstorm. We've got Jim Phillip, who's our independent board member. We've since added others. We've got tons of advisors who've come to the table whose interests are not financial in the company. And so while a lot of the time the company and the investors' interests are aligned, it is not universal. And it is very easy at that stage when you're younger, you're smaller, once again, not age-wise, but company maturity-wise on the arc, to just say, well, yeah, they invested, of course, they should have the board seat, they should be the advisor, and they're who I should listen to. That's what I would say long-term, is that it will behoove you personally and it will behoove your company to bring in outside independent experts to help balance the scales.
Yeah, that's a great point. So how have you formed your advisory board? Is there like a framework that you look for to be like, I need this kind of advisor, or this is what I need? What's your thought process there?
I really wish I had something formal for you, but it's kind of like Dan was talking about when you look at startups, like yes, there are people, and you look at their resumes and you look at their pedigrees and you look at like this, they're going to have industry experience, or they're going to have stage of growth that I'm in experience, regardless of industry. But it really comes down to the person, right? Like I have met people who are absolute experts in my field, and I'm like, I have no interest in talking to that person. Our personalities are not going to clash, not because they have a bad personality, but I know mine and I've gotten to know theirs, and it's just not going to be a good fit. So you've got to have people that you want to talk to, right? That is the purpose of an advisory board. You want to go seek out their counsel. You want to hear what they have to say. If it's someone that you get lectured from all of the time, you will naturally avoid it, which means now you're avoiding good information. It's not a good relationship.
Right, that's right. So what do you think the sweet spot is on the number of advisors?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it depends on your size of company. How I've approached it is it's kind of like two layers. There's like this core group who there's very small, right? 2 to 3. They know everything that's going on. You talk to them regularly. It's kind of, they know the holistic perspective, and that's what they're always giving you input on. And then there's this outer kind of floating moon orb of very specialized things. Okay, here's not your Bob, a different Bob. Here's this Bob, and he's really good on Medicare, and he's really good with the selling season of health plans. But during the rest of the year, we don't talk all that much. But when it's selling season, man, we talk about where the plans are at, if people have jumped from one plan to another, right? Okay, here's someone else who's great on the account management side. We don't talk during selling season, but I call her when we've got a lot of account management rollouts going on. So I think of it as like the inner shell and the outer shell, and the outer one are more very point specific skill sets.
That's a great point. Interesting.
But I like to talk a lot, so that's why I have that many to talk to.
Yeah, we need to circle back at some point and talk about why you were in a coffee shop, because I'm not sure if you.
I don't drink coffee. No, there's just Starbucks is a great place to have a meeting. Dan picked the location, and subsequently we meet there all the time. And most of my meetings are in Starbucks. I stole that from you, Dan. Now I go to that Starbucks, but all meetings are in Starbucks, I think, is how it pretty much goes. But no, I don't drink coffee.
And funny part is, Jamie, I also don't drink coffee.
I don't either. Well, we're in good company.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Dan, I'm going to ask you the same question. So if there was one thing you wanted early stage startup founders and early stage companies to kind of take away from all of this, or anything else that you want to put out there that we haven't talked about, what would it be?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, it's don't be afraid to ask for help, because at some point you're going to need it. And you want to be willing to take the feedback that you don't want to hear and implement it, because there's going to be a time where you're not going to be right. You're going to need the help. And there's people that you surround yourself with, whether it's a direct advisor or an orbital advisor, as Ed mentioned, that is going to make you really have a moment of pause. And it may change the trajectory of your company for the better. And so you have to be open as a founder for that feedback. And that's a criteria that we look at from an investment standpoint. Can the team execute? Are they going to take feedback? Are they going to make changes? Like, those things are all critically important. And for me, whether I am an investor or, for example, I'm the sitting chief operating officer for Script. And for me, it's to help them grow and deal with the wonderful explosive growth that this company is having. I'm actually in our office right now. And I try and take that perspective as well, that I sit within a developing company now, not as an investor, but as somebody of the company. And I want to hear from our advisors what we're doing right and wrong, and make the appropriate changes to be a better steward of the company and make it successful so everybody benefits. If everybody has that perspective, then I think it makes Tampa even better.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think sometimes it's like what we really need to hear and what we want to hear are not the same thing. And, but it really can lead to those pivotal moments, where we can really grow. So that's cool. Okay, so last question. I'll start with Ed. Ed, if you can go back in time and tell young Peerfit Ed one thing, what would it be?
I think of the advice that I would have listened to, because that's a pivotal part here. Young Ed, go into Medicare Advantage sooner. I think this has been a great market for us to go into. And I couldn't even imagine if we had gone into it a year or 2 years earlier, pre-COVID, right? Because I think our first big year in it is COVID kind of causes a really interesting dynamic, some of which are favorable for us and some are not favorable for us. So it would have been amazing to have jumped into this side of the market. And this was one that we had been talking about for years. So I wish we would have gotten into it sooner.
That's cool. Okay, so Dan, I'll ask you the same thing. So if you could go back in time, as maybe early ARC application days, early investor days, early company builder days, what would you tell yourself?
It's interesting. I'm a true believer that everything kind of happens for a reason, and I would never go back and second guess the decisions that we've made in terms of the companies we've invested in, because I think that they all help to build a foundation and compile upon your journey. But I do say that through our course of time, we've learned many different things about how we invest, the perspective we take, how we analyze information, how we represent ourselves and our group and the community. So all those things I constantly iterate on, and I feel like that's important for us. And I always ask myself, when an opportunity comes along, I always say to myself the same exact thing, and I say this to my partners: how, if we take on this opportunity, is that going to water down the impact and availability I have to an Ed Buckley or an Aaron White, right? Because if I'm taking away from my experience with them, then I'm not providing the service or the connection that I had committed to. So I always stop and pause whenever we look at opportunities, because I want to make sure that I'm available for Ed when he calls, and it's not just a voicemail on the other side. And to me, that's what it's about. It's not about having 150 companies in our portfolio. It's about making sure that whatever we've committed to Ed or Aaron White and Script, that we're honoring our commitments and we're doing the right things to support them.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that even kind of goes back, that's like full circle. It goes back to, what we had talked about right out of the get-go, was saying no to some things, right? So that you can say yes to the things that are the most important.
We want to truly represent who we are, and we do that in all of our actions, and we want to make sure that that's clear and transparent at all times.
Yeah, it's great. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with me. This has been super fun. And, I think it's going to be so exciting, with this transaction that happened and seeing, kind of where this wake goes, really for both of you guys, and kind of what's next in 2021 and 2022. So we're excited to see what's next.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Thank you for having us.